back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. This hour is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page Jumpstart Your Intuition Guide. If you are interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner, now is your chance to save 30% on all of their training programs. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. It's also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healings, and psychic readings. If you haven't gotten a copy of my book, E.T. Chronicles, it's available at your local bookstore. Or if you haven't seen my new film, Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, you can get it on digital download from Amazon.com. Woohoo, that's everything. Let me tell you a little bit about this hour's guest and get him on the air, because I have multiple pages of notes and only an hour to squish it all in. I need to compress time. And we're going to be speaking to Rick DeLano about geocentrism. So Rick DeLano has worked as a producer, executive producer, and financial consultant in the music and film industry for over 20 years. The Principle is the first documentary examining the Copernican cosmological principle and has generated a bit of controversy. So we're going to find out all about it. Please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Rick DeLano. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Hello, Dr. Rita. I'm great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful, and I'm so excited to talk to you about your film, because it was... I love, in my own work, I love pushing on the edge of the box, or standing over the edge of the box and going, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And people go, but all you do is ask a lot of questions. It's like, well, if you don't ask the questions, you're never going to get the answer. And I feel like your film, The Principle, asks a lot of questions, maybe doesn't have all the answers, but makes people have to think about stuff, which I love. So anyway, so what made you decide to make a film about, it really does seem a little out there, in the documentary world, Copernican cosmology.
Well, it's really funny. It's the one thing that if you go up to 1,000 people and you say, do you believe in God? Maybe 70, 60, 50, whatever, are going to say yes. But if you walk up to 100 people and you say, do you believe in gravity? 100 people are going to say yes. And there's probably no idea that's more thoroughly built into our worldview than the idea that we're nothing special, that we're just an insignificant dust mote out there, and that the universe is vast and incomprehensible, and we're just an insignificant dot in it. And that is essentially the Copernican principle, the idea that the Earth does not occupy a special position in the cosmos.
Because Copernicus was the one who said that the Earth rotates around the sun versus the other way, where everything rotates around the Earth, correct?
Yep. Those are the two options. There's really no third way to do it. You've either got a cosmos orbiting around a central Earth, which was the unanimous view of reality that basically every human being had up until reasonably recently. About the middle of the 16th, 17th century was when this idea started to come into to widespread adoption. Before that, everybody, from the designers of the pyramids and Stonehenge all the way up to St. Robert Bellarmine at the Inquisition, were completely convinced that, if I said to you that the Earth was rotating on its axis and going around the sun, well, I was clearly crazy and needed help. And of course, if I say to you today that it's not, then I'm crazy.
And you need help.
And I need help. And to me, this is one of those really fascinating things, because how did How did every single human being's fundamental view of reality get completely inverted, essentially over a matter of maybe 100 years or so? It's very fascinating how that was accomplished.
But I mean, if you think about it, though, you know, we went from being the center of the universe and living on a flat planet to not and a round world.
Yeah, the flat planet thing is kind of that actually was never widely believed in the Western world. It was well known. People could notice eclipses, and people could notice that all the other planets up there were round. And from the time that Eratosthenes measured the angle of incidence of sunlight at two separated spots on the circumference of the Earth, it's been pretty widely established for a long time that we're essentially a sphere. But the question was, where is the location of that sphere? Is this sphere the center of the universe? Is the universe literally created around this place that we are? Or are we just another one of the billions and billions and billions of other planets out there that are perfectly as good for life as we are? And this gives rise to two very fundamental, powerful world stories. And these two world stories and their conflict have really shaped Western civilization. Story number one is Genesis. It puts us right there smack dab in the center. Everything in this universe is for us. Story number two is the Big Bang. And we're nothing special. And there's absolutely nothing significant or intrinsically important about us. And those two world stories are very much in conflict with one another. And clearly there's been a lot of turmoil and tension and actual changes of entire worldview associated with that question. So we made the film because starting along about 10 years ago, we became capable technologically of putting sensors up, not just into Earth orbit, but into locations far removed from Earth, where we could actually look away from the solar system and away from Earth and away from all of the sources of heat and interference. And we actually were able to image, for the very first time, the furthest observable structure that we will ever see in the cosmos. If there's anything further than what we've seen, we'll never be able to see it because the light will never have time to reach us. So we are the first generation that has actually seen the furthest observable structure in the cosmos. And this is the so-called cosmic microwave background. And this microwave background was predicted to exist by the Big Bang theorists. And lo and behold, it was discovered in the middle late 60s, and missions began to be launched to study it, first in 1991, again in 2001, and finally the real big one, which reported last year. And what these probes have discovered is so darned astonishing that essentially the reason they sent up three is because they haven't been able to believe their eyes. They haven't been able to believe what this structure is telling them, because it happens to be the largest structure in all of the universe. It is the leftover radiation from the Big Bang, according to the standard model of cosmology. It should have absolutely nothing to do with us. After all, we didn't come into existence until 9 billion years after this would have formed. So imagine their shock when they start looking at this and they start looking at the structure in the thermal emissions and the energy, and they find that it's defining a preferred direction across the entire universe. But wait, there's more. It's not just any preferred direction. It's a preferred direction that's related to us, to the location that we occupy, not just the galaxy. No, this is us. Us and our local neighborhood here are somehow built in to the largest structure in the universe. And this is, frankly, just too incredibly impossible to believe. For that
is that axis? I love the name, the axis of evil.
Yeah, axis of evil.
It makes me think of like Darth Vader. It's the axis of evil.
Yeah, Yeah, come on. Tell me these scientists don't know how to market. Come on. I mean, that was a bit of genius, to call it the axis of evil. And of course it is. From the standpoint of the Big Bang theorist, this is evil. The Big Bang Theory is so stupendously successful at explaining and accounting for so much of what we observe. But there isn't supposed to be an axis pointing across the entire universe at us. And
so could you kind of explain that? Because I think we're kind of losing people as to what's pointing at what and how we relate with that. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's the subject of the film. It is called the axis of evil because this cosmic microwave background should be smooth. I mean, there was a Big Bang, right? Explosions don't organize themselves into nice little pointing arrows at any particular spot, certainly not us. And the leftover radiation from the Big Bang is throughout the universe, fills the entire universe. It should be absolutely smooth in all directions. There should be no up, no down, no left, no right. All of the tiny little temperature variations should be random, but they're not. And the temperature variations, when you decompose them, and that's the scientist who did this explains how he did it in the film, you're supposed to get a random distribution of these signatures across the cosmos. We don't get that. What we get is an axis of evil, a preferred direction that is extending across the universe. It has now been seen that not only is the cosmic microwave background organized along this axis, but all kinds of different phenomena. The bulk flow of galaxies, quasars, all kinds of different phenomena are exhibiting a preferred orientation along this direction. And then this direction is pointing back at the one place in the universe where we know there are observers smart enough to build telescopes and notice. It's almost like a bad joke. It is like the worst nightmare imaginable for a civilization that has constructed its entire view of reality based on the insignificance of the place that they live. So it's a big deal, and we're making the film, and because this is such a big deal, we're ruffling a few feathers by bringing this information to the public, to the folks who pay for all of this.
So I get the axis of evil thing, but you're also saying that there are other galaxies that align with that. See, that I didn't catch that part. That there are other galaxies that actually align with that.
Yeah,
lineup that it becomes even a bigger. It becomes bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger than that even. I mean, it's even since we finished the film, there have been absolutely stunning discoveries. And the reason we didn't go into these in the film is because we ask a lot of our audience as it is. We want to start the conversation here and encourage people to be aware of the fact that this astounding new observational structure to the universe is now, there's no question it's there. They've run 3 different missions. It's there. Now, reasonable people can disagree about what it might mean, but there's no longer any doubt that it's there. And we'll spend the next however many years trying to figure out a way to explain this. But what we know for sure is that not only is the CMB, the cosmic background, organized around this special direction. For example, when you look at spiral galaxies, some of them spin left and some of them spin right. And, under a Copernican principle universe, you should have just about as many going one way as you do the other. There shouldn't be any particular preferred orientation. What has been determined is that there is, along this same direction, along this same axis, a marked and statistically significant tendency for galaxies to spin right. It has been determined that the overall large-scale flow of galaxies, they call it the bulk flow, or the galaxy bulk flow, is also organized around this direction. And just over the past year or so, there have been observations that are so listen, I didn't put them in the film because they were very new and there was a lot of controversy and it's not quite solid enough yet to put in. But we are seeing indications, really, that incomprehensibly the entire structure, the large-scale structure of the cosmos is arranged around us, very much like that ancient cosmology of geocentrism would have suggested, very much like that original story of Genesis, which would have put us at the center of creation, would have suggested. And needless to say, these observations are extremely controversial because we start to bring in issues of who's got what Nobel Prize on what wall and how many PhDs are on how many walls that are based upon a worldview that is completely committed to us being utterly insignificant. What happens now when you are faced with observations that directly contradict that? Well, it can get pretty messy, and I think it's already started to.
I love it. So, but how could the Earth be the center of everything if you utilize the Big Bang Theory as the basis of the origin of the world? I mean, in my thought process, it would mean that we would be potentially off in our little galaxy, off to one corner of somewhere, kind of thing. So,
oh yeah, no, let's come right out and say it. It's impossible. If our cosmology is right, this is impossible. There's no possible way that you start with a Big Bang and end up with an Earth around which all the structures in the universe are geometrically oriented. That's impossible. And that's why
unless we were the origin of the Big Bang.
Yes, exactly. And of course, that's not going to fly because the singularity, according to present cosmology, it doesn't exist inside the universe. It's not something that we can locate and find, according to the standard model of cosmology, the Big Bang model. Suffice it to say that if you were to wake up a physicist and ask him to explain why it is that the largest structure in the universe is oriented toward the ecliptic and equinox of the Earth, he would have absolutely no conceivably reasonable way to account for that other than to say, what a coincidence. And of course, at the end of the day, you can always say that. I mean, there's only one universe. We don't have a sample of universes to go out there and see what's strange and what's not strange. What we do know is that a Big Bang universe should not be picking out a special direction related in any way, shape, or form at all to the Earth. So it's a big deal in cosmology. I will just say this. Michio Kaku, Dr. Michio Kaku in the film, has a wonderful moment in the film where he says, several decades ago, we discovered a problem that was so serious that it was brushed under the carpet for decades. And I loved that because I said, yes, I need to get this in there because people don't understand that cosmology is really hard, okay? You got to cut these guys a break at a certain point because it's really hard to figure out the universe. And occasionally, these observations will come along that simply don't fit. And what they did, in the case of what Dr. Kaku was talking about, he was talking about, we began to notice about 70 years ago that the spiral galaxies, were not obeying the laws of gravity. We have extremely good basis for assuming that the laws of gravity are true here. We land ships on Mars and the moon, and we do those calculations based on, essentially Newtonian ideas, and they work pretty darned well, right? When we look at the spiral galaxies, they don't even approximately obey those laws. They're spinning far too fast. They're not obeying the law that we see in the solar system where, Mercury's real close in, so it goes real fast around the sun, and Jupiter's way far out, so it goes real slow around the sun. The galaxies are not obeying that law. And they noticed this 70 years ago, and they kept it swept under the carpet because they couldn't come up with an answer. They had no answer. And I'm sure that most of your audience will have heard the term dark matter. You've heard it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. What is dark matter? Dark matter is a fudge factor.
It's dark.
It's a fudge factor plugged into a bunch of equations because the galaxies aren't behaving the way Newton's and Einstein's gravitational theories say they should. There's a bunch of missing stuff to explain why they're orbiting the way that they are. So dark matter becomes a solution to bridge the otherwise insuperable gap between theory and what we actually see in our telescopes. So dark matter was trotted out as the solution to this problem. And one of the reasons that my film is so controversial is that they don't have a solution to this axis of evil. They've known about it for going on 15, probably closer to 10, 12 years now. And at first they were just completely convinced it had to be a mistake. I mean, come on, anybody with half a brain knows that that's crazy. But it was in the data so strong that they sent up, 2 more missions to study this. The last one reported in March of last year, just as I was finishing my film. And everybody that we talked to, essentially with 1 or 2 exceptions, has just said, oh, nobody takes that seriously. That's just a foreground contamination. Oh, that's just that's an error in the scanning. It's not real. Well, we decided to bet the film on the fact that it was real, and it turned out to be real. So that's where the film really starts to become dangerous, is because we're sitting here with interviews with the leading scientists in the world about this axis, when most of them were absolutely convinced that when the Planck satellite reported in 2013, this would go away, this would be resolved. It wasn't resolved, it was confirmed, and now we don't have an answer. And here we have these pesky little filmmakers who are going out to the public with information that really is not, they don't want it out there right now. But we're going out anyway, and it's going to be quite interesting to see what the response of the mainstream community is going to be if this film should open successfully and find an audience. It's going to get very, very interesting very, very quickly.
But I feel like this is kind of an ongoing thing in the scientific community. Like one of my areas is ancient history. I don't want to say I'm an ancient alien person, but, if you had to shove me in a category, you can stick me there. Looking at these anomalies in the archaeological records, and, they don't even want to go there. It's like, well, how did this happen?
Well, you're right. And look, let's face it. We all know that this is such a profoundly high-stakes question. Worldview, the dominant worldview, is far more powerful than money, far more powerful than military, far more powerful than anything. Because if you are able to tell the story of who and what we are, that's the greatest power that exists in the world, because you're going to shape the glasses that people put on at birth. And everything they see is going to be interpreted through those glasses. So whoever gets to design those glasses essentially runs the world. And we are in a period in the world where, it used to be that our miracles came from saints and our authority figures were priests. And now our miracles come from laboratories and our authority figures are scientists. And really, the shoe is simply on the other foot. No civilization likes having its orthodoxy questioned. That's a fact. And the deeper you go in challenging that orthodoxy, the more you're going to find out that there's real living lightning involved in challenging the foundational assumptions that govern our view of reality.
So let's go back to this whole theory in question. So I know from, my scientific education that when you look at the expanding universe, the concept of the expanding universe, and all the galaxies are moving, away from us at an equal rate, blah, blah, blah. Which I never really could wrap my mind around, how they could all be moving away from us at a equal rate. But it sounds like this theory, a little hard as it may be to believe, okay, really resolves that issue. Well, it brings the question, like, well, why would we be the center of everything? Unless there's some relativity something. I mean, I could come up with some maybe plausible commentary, but anyway, I'll start with that question.
Well, look, you've raised another one. It always keeps coming back to this weird thing. Everything seems to put us in the center. In the film, we have a little wonderful animated sequence of Edward Hubble, looking through his telescope up at the top of Mount Wilson in Los Angeles and becoming the first guy to find out that the universe was a whole lot bigger than we thought, because we thought that the universe was our galaxy. That's all we had ever seen. He was able to look out and see that there were many, 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 many more galaxies, which was stunning. But there was something much more stunning than that. Every place he looked in the sky and he saw these galaxies, they were redshifted. In other words, the light was being stretched toward the red end of the spectrum. It's like if you're at a train station, right? And the train comes through and he's blowing his horn. And as he blows through the station, the horn goes, it's called the Doppler effect. As sound waves are stretched as the source moves away from you, the pitch goes down. Same thing with light. If a light source is moving away from you at high rates, then the light is going to be stretched toward the lower end of the spectrum, just as the sound is stretched by the train going through the station with its horn blowing. And you can actually measure the degree of that redshift on the assumption that it is a Doppler effect, to measure how far something is and how fast it's moving away from you. Now, what Hubble saw, and it literally almost caused the poor guy to have a nervous breakdown, was that every one of these galaxies appeared to be moving away from us. And not only that, the ones that were twice as far away were moving twice as fast. And the ones that were 3 times as far away were moving 3 times as fast. And of course, if you stop and think about that for a second, if everything you see is moving away from you in a uniform way in all directions, what does that tell you about where you are? It tells you you're in the center. And of course, this absolutely stunned Hubble. And he wrestled with this his whole life. It was Einstein who came up with the brilliant idea of the expanding universe. That the reason it looked like we were in the center was that it like, picture a balloon. You take a balloon, right? You take a magic marker and you put a few dots on the balloon. You start blowing it up. Well, as the surface of the balloon expands, each one of those dots moves away from each other, right? But if you were sitting on any one of those dots, it would look like you were in the center and they were all moving away from you. And that brilliant idea of the expanding universe was Einstein's way to explain this. Hubble never believed in the expanding universe. Right up to his dying day, he wrestled with it, he considered it, but he never believed it. And when he looked at this evidence, he was very troubled, because it did, in fact, put us, he even said in his book, The Observational Approach to Cosmology, he said, this is analogous in a sense to the ancient idea of a central Earth. And of course, that's anathema to a scientist. So the way that was solved was the expanding universe. It would look the same no matter where you were, because space itself is expanding, like the surface of that balloon. So don't worry, it looks like we're in the center again, but we're really not. The universe is expanding uniformly from every point. It would look like you were in the center no matter where you were in that universe. Oh, okay, that's great. That worked fine for about, that got us through about, 50, 60 years. And then we started putting up these deep space observational platforms that were able to see vastly further out into the cosmos than ever before. And the same problem is coming back to us. On these hugely large scales, when the balloon's really blown up big, there should be absolutely no structure left in those dots. Even if you had an intricate pattern when you started, as the balloon blows up, that pattern is going to be erased by the expansion. Guess what? It's not. We still see, instead of this smooth balloon-type universe, we see structure. We see structure way, way, way out that shouldn't be there. And again, the structure is related to where we are in the universe, which is a violation of that Copernican principle, and gives us even more to worry about if our worldview is committed to the idea that the Earth is nothing special and insignificant. They really have some problems on their hands now, and they're big. So we're bringing this to the attention of the audience to get ready, because every time this question comes up, man, it gets real hairy. I mean, let's face it. Medieval civilization declined and fell based on the idea that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. It was that overwhelming change in the view of the way reality is that really brings the modern scientific world into existence. So the stakes are very, very high here. If it turns out that the universe is structured in such a way that Earth does occupy a special position, we're on the verge of a completely new revolution, a third Copernican revolution. The first two had pretty significant cultural impact.
So it sounds like they do not believe that if we were, on Alpha Centauri or whatever and did the same kind of readings, they would get similar results.
Well, this is the problem. That's the theory. The theory is we shouldn't see anything different from Alpha Centauri or Betelgeuse than we would see from Earth. We would still see a smooth, regular, non-patterned structure. There would be no up, no down, no left, no right, no center, no edges, no matter where you're looking from. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing.
But even with the patterns, they don't believe that they would see a similar relational pattern from their planet.
Oh, no, you have to understand, the Copernican principle is the foundational glasses that we wear to interpret all data. Only mavericks and dissidents would even so much as even think to challenge that fact. Because if that's wrong, if the Copernican principle is wrong, everything we think we know about the universe is wrong. If that particular assumption is false, all our math is wrong. All our interpretation of what we're seeing through our telescopes is wrong. In fact, our entire worldview is wrong. That's big. So there's no way that you're going to see this. This is not going to roll over without a fight, and this is certainly not going to roll over based on even compelling observational evidence like we have. But we have reached a point now where this problem is getting so serious that a small but very significant and growing minority of even mainstream, big institution, credentialed academics are beginning to think the unthinkable, to try and figure out how we might model the universe apart from that Copernican principle. And some amazing things are already happening. I mean, we all know about dark matter. Most people may not have heard about dark energy, the latest entrant in the dark side of the universe. Yeah. You see, they figured out about, about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that, they figured out that not only did the universe have to be expanding, the universe had to be speeding up in its expansion, which is kind of weird because gravity would tend to slow the expansion down, right? What in the world could be speeding it up? Well, it has to be speeding up because we see that the supernova are giving us observational indications that in fact that's happening. So how do you speed up a universe? Well, again, you've already invented dark matter to solve the spiral galaxies. Now you invent dark energy. What's dark energy? Nobody has a clue what dark. You know what dark energy is? It's a shaman.
It's invisible.
It's invisible. It's invisible. But
you can borrow that.
I love that. It's something that we sprinkle in to make the equations work, to make the equations fit the observations. So, these are really smart guys. I mean, one of the things I learned from interviewing some of these guys is that they're no dummies. Believe me, they are really smart. And they are, most of them, I think, really honestly foundationally committed to the scientific method. Some of them
but at least they're talking about it and not just continuing to throw it under the carpet.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, part of the process is that you have to pull it out from under the carpet. And in the case of the Copernican principle now, so many observations are beginning to really, it's like if you have a theory and you're continually patching it up and inventing stuff and, after the fact, post hoc, ad hoc patch-ups. Well, we used to laugh at Ptolemy for all of his epicycles. Oh, yeah, he always had epicycles. Well, guess what? That's what we're doing. We're adding dark matter and dark energy and inflation and multiverses and all, because there's so many things that we're seeing now in our telescopes that don't fit the theory. So a significant minority of very mainstream thinkers are beginning to toy with the idea of how can we model the universe and get rid of, dark energy. Well, we can get rid of dark energy very easily. It's been done. At the University of Oxford, some researchers simply said, okay, what else could explain these speeding up observations? And they realized that if all they did was, instead of having Earth be an insignificant pebble out there, they assumed that Earth was at the center of everything, that they could account for all of these observations of the supernova without having to invent dark energy. Now that really got some eyebrows raised.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh yeah, no, it's coming. We are on the verge, I am absolutely convinced, of a big change in the way that we model and look at the universe. And the irony and the thing that makes this a little scary and a little dangerous is that, remember, who tells the story of our place in the cosmos basically has the greatest power in the world. The creation myth that we believe to be true will filter absolutely everything that we see and think about. And it's very simple. We're either an insignificant dust mote and the universe doesn't care about us, or we're the center. And there is no doubt that those two questions have been at war before, and civilizations have fallen based on one of them eclipsing the other. And there is no question that you can't get around the fact that this is a big, high-stakes question.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to change subjects here, and this is more for because I have a personal question about it. But in the film, it talks about these shells, that in the distance between, I guess, the edge of the observable universe and the Earth, there seem to be these shells of expansion. Would that be a correct way of expressing it?
Yeah, shells of galaxies, yes.
Okay. So is there any thought to time-wise time-wise, when these different shells were created? And I have a very personal, I'll just share. So I love mythology, and so in Hindu mythology, it talks about the day and the night of Brahma. And Brahma, all right, I'm kind of pulling this out of my butt here a second, because I don't have the numbers and it's a big number, and so with Brahma, he has one day every 4 billion years, 8 billion years, something like that. And that's one day, not day and night. But I mean, it's this big chunk of time, and they talk about these big cycles of time. And I'm just wondering if these shells, time-wise, could even correlate to mythology that we have inherited on the Earth.
Well, I wish I was better informed with the myth tradition that you are addressing. I have to confess that, like most Westerners, I'm miserably informed, so I apologize for that. But just based on what you've said so far, I can tell you a couple of things you might find interesting. This survey of the galaxies, it doesn't go out all that far, only about 1 billion light years. And of course, the universe is supposedly about 13.8 billion. So there's plenty beyond what this survey covers. But if you go out about 1 billion too, you find 7 distinct preferred values around which the galaxies tend statistically. They tend to lie closer along these particular values, which is crazy. Now, if you want to get real crazy, 7 of them, and you can think of them as a series of concentric bands or shells around our location. One scientist has actually published a peer-reviewed paper who proposes that what's happening here is that as the universe expands, it goes fast for a while, then it slows down for a while, then it goes fast for a while, and it slows down for a while. And what we're seeing in these bands of galaxies is just the evidence of those periods of speeding up and slowing down. Personally, I wouldn't be inclined to buy that, because what in the heck mechanism would speed up and slow down a universe? But, these guys are a lot smarter than I am. I'm just saying, that was...
You're just reporting it. I know.
I'm just reporting it, that's all. But what I can say is that the other alternative is that it is exactly what we're seeing. And what we're seeing, apart from a universe that's speeding up and slowing down in its expansion, is a series of concentric shells of galaxies centered on our location. And again, we're back to that ancient view of the cosmos as created around us. And all of a sudden, we are elevated to a level of dramatic significance in the overall structure of the cosmos. You mentioned time. The biggest thing that is at stake here, I think, with the Copernican principle, is that the Copernican principle allows us to turn these redshifts into clocks. When you hear that the universe is 13.8 billion years old, they can tell you that based on the redshift of these galaxies and a few other assumptions that work together.
But that's only the observable universe.
Absolutely.
But they put that out. That's one of my pet peeves. It's like, well, they say the universe is 13 billion. It's like, well, are you saying that there's this big shell and that's it? Or is there more out there?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, look, here's the thing. Like I say, we got to cut these guys some slack, because it's really hard. I mean, this is really hard to figure out. But what I think is very valid in what you're saying, especially now, is that you get honorary crackpot status anytime you challenge the reigning paradigm. It's just built into the cake. I'm sure you've run into it. I'm definitely running into it. But that's okay, because every once in a while, our world picture begins to get enough chinks in the armor that it really starts to wobble. You really get the sense that, this powerful expression of reality is in trouble. I definitely feel that it is. So it's times like this where sometimes it's the weirdest idea that can turn out to have the solution. I mean, think about Kepler. Kepler was a mystic, man. He was sitting there trying to figure out the way the universe worked by inscribing Platonic solids and doing all this Pythagorean magic stuff, right? Well, we'd laugh at that today. He'd be a crackpot today. Guess what he came up with? He came up with the laws of planetary motion. I don't know how it worked for him, but it did. He
was probably smarter than me.
Yeah, he's probably smarter than me, too. I can tell a bunch smarter than me. But he would have been viewed as a crackpot today. Oh, come on. The Pythagorean structure of space. Come on. Well, whether it was crackpottery or not, Newton came up with his law of gravity based on what Kepler did. And that's worked pretty well for us. So I would encourage all the crackpots out there, we have to interface with the dominant worldview if we want to communicate with them. And it can be pretty tough. They can get a little defensive, especially at times like now. But
can I throw out because we have 6 minutes. So let me just throw out, has anyone ever thrown on the table based on what is being seen that what we're observing, and I'm just going to really throw one out there, that what we're observing is actually just some kind of a holographic matrix, and we're creating the reality of what we're seeing out there?
There are serious scientists who are actually developing the idea of a holographic universe. You can see this in papers that are on the preprint servers at Cornell. That is by far, that's not a crackpot. That's still crackpot.
Woohoo! They say I'm smart sometimes.
I'm telling you, Dr. Rita, you put some money behind that horse, because I'll tell you right now, there are people who are very seriously thinking along those lines. As a matter of fact, I'll send you a couple of links tomorrow, just of papers that are addressing that idea. And so I'm afraid you're going to have to get a little weirder if you want to go for real crackpot status.
I do my share in holding it up.
But no, there are people who are thinking along those lines. And of course, to my shock and amazement, there are people who are publishing in published journals now challenging the Copernican principle. This is stunning.
So how are you dealing with the controversy? I mean, I went and was looking you up when I was waiting to get your bio. And I'm like, well, maybe I can find something online. And I'm like, I mean, they were kind of flaming.
Oh, so no, they're really mad at me. My buddies, who I had such a great time talking for, hours and hours about cosmology. There was a very clear media assassination attempt launched against my film. And I have to tell you, I am honored. I'm amazed that my little cosmology doc has been judged worthy of being subjected to an absolutely astonishing and hysterical.
One that hasn't even been released yet.
Exactly. The trailer did it, man. We just put the trailer up, but it was like, whoa. We were in thousands and thousands of papers and broadcasts all over the world. I remember this, Der Spiegel in Germany. I love the German language, because it's like, scandal documentary. The scandal document. I mean, I'm going, wow, I'm pretty stunned. My little cosmology doc is all over the world. And the story is essentially that I somehow tricked the smartest guys in the world into sitting down and talking to me on camera for hours and hours, and they never had the slightest idea what I was asking them about. And of course, Rita, that's absurd. Anybody with half a brain can realize that narrative is a complete joke. It's a complete insult to all of our intelligence. The fact of the matter is, the stakes are so high here. The idea that the Earth could be at the center of the universe is such a volatile idea that a bunch of very powerful interests just basically got everybody involved in this film on the phone and said, you've been duped into a film by geocentrists, and they're cutting the film to make it look like you support geocentrism. How would they know? None of them had seen it. Nobody's seen it to this day. It opens on Friday in Chicago. Come and see it. It's not like that at all. But I was amazed at the just stunning nature of this. I mean, overnight, I went from obscurity to most evil crackpot in the world in 24 hours.
It's the axis of evil. Yeah. Got it on your side.
There you go. But, we've weathered that storm, and like so often happens, I think the phrase is, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's happened to us, because we are now visible all over the world.
You said it's releasing in Chicago, and so what happens after that? I mean, I have people asking, what's the film? Where can I see it? So it releases Friday, then what? How can people get to it?
Here's the deal. We're swinging for the fences here. It's very rare for a film like this to ever get within 1 million miles of theaters. But because of all the controversy, because of how good it is, Rocky Mountain Pictures says, okay, we'll give you a shot. We're going to put you into one city. We're going to open you just like we opened Obama 2016, one city. If people come, we'll expand you. If they don't...
Obama 2016?
Yeah, Obama 2016 was launched in one theater. One theater.
Well, I never heard. Now, see, now I'm going to have to look that up. It's like
that was the best. That was the highest grossing documentary in America in 2012. That was the biggest grossing documentary film released in the United States in 2012. And of course, it's not hard to figure out why. I mean, everybody knew that Obama was going to win the election, so they could always go vote with their ticket. You know, they could vote with their ticket against Obama. Basically, that was a brilliant marketing plan, and then it worked. Ours is a bit of a tougher sell. I mean, there's really nobody who's on the geocentrism side of the ledger, but it's such a fascinating film, and the controversy has really put it in a position of visibility. So what's going to happen is this. We're going to open the film a week from Friday. People are either going to show up or they're not. If they show up, we're going to be everywhere, and we'll have really one of the most controversial films in the world. And there are so many people all over the world that are screaming to see this film. So fear not, if we don't pull the numbers that we have to in Chicago, it's no big deal. It's like, I didn't spend $50 million on this film. I don't have to go out there and sell 20 billion tickets. Look, if we go theatrical, that would be wonderful. It would be exciting. But if we don't, that's fine too, because the visibility that the film has already achieved will allow us to make the film available on DVD, on movies on demand, and we'll do sponsored screenings in cities and so on and so forth. So people are going to get a chance to see this film. Don't even doubt it. The film will be available. But we're taking a a big swing for the fences here to see if we can actually get people to come out and watch it in the theaters. And we'll know the answer to that question in a couple of weeks.
So if anyone that's listening lives in the Chicago area, go support the film.
Yeah, go to our website, buy your tickets. They're selling out fast.
Okay, the website is?
theprincipalmovie.com.
Theprincipalmovie.com, because we need to go. And Rick, may the force be with you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Rita. Thank you for having me, and thanks for everyone for listening.
Well, you were delightful, and I am just
to be alive.
I'm just, going to put out good energy that, millions of people show up and
I love it.
All that.
I love it. And if not, don't worry. We'll be out there, and we have a fascinating film, one that's definitely worth pro and con the time to take a look and see these fascinating scientists who are struggling with these immensely important and powerful questions.
Well, I am going to let you go, and thank you for coming on and sharing your movie and letting me get a sneak preview.
Oh, thank you for watching, Dr. Rita, and thank you for having me on. And I'm going to send you a couple of papers about this holographic universe. You'll get a kick out.
Okay. All right. Good night. Good luck. And I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's Rick DeLano. His movie is The Principal in Chicago on Friday, so go see it. And next week, we're going to be speaking with Barry Taff about ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, telepathy, and remote viewing. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.